let's talk some more about connectors. Okay, so as I was saying that we have some defined connectors for each of the vendor that we'll be sending. For example, benefits we discussed. We have lots of benefit connectors, which are again called as cloud connectors that are dedicatedly created for those vendors. And for payroll, we have the popular vendor called ADP. Okay, ADP connector we have. So whenever we actually configure some of the information related to payroll, related to employee and all, automatically the connector will be sending that information to ADP. Okay, because the connector itself is created for ADP. Okay, and ADP has its own connector in Workday, and which can actually send that information to all the payroll information to ADP. And we have third-party connect. Let's say if ADP is not the connector, we have a different vendor, different payroll vendor. Okay, we have different third-party payroll connectors which we can build and send to any of the third-party payroll vendor. Let's say in India we have Ascent, we have Ceridian HR, Ascent HR, and who's HR. A lot of payroll systems are there, which actually does specifically the third-party payroll system for employers. So when we wanted to send data to those kind of vendors, ADP will not work because ADP is dedicated to ADP only. Okay, we cannot send data through ADP connector to third-party payroll vendors. So we have different connectors, payroll interface, and payroll effective change interface. These are the templates we have. When I say templates are nothing but connectors. Okay, we have specific connectors that will be sending this information to these payroll vendors. Okay, so like that we have specific connectors for specific usage. Okay, and similarly worker. So when we wanted to send a worker information, what we'll generally do in EIB, we'll be creating a report on worker business object and gather all the fields that are required and trigger an EIB that will be sending all the worker information to external system, right? If there are any calculated fields that we need, we'll be creating calculations and we'll be sending that worker information to external system. In connector also, we have specifically for worker, and that is not called as cloud connector. That is called as core connector. Okay, core connectors, we have worker. When I say core connector, what is the specification it has to have? It has to have an accessibility that needs to be attached to core connector to format the output data. That is only the specification it has. Cloud connectors will be generating data in a format that external system will be accepting, where we don't need to write any accessibility. Core connectors will be requiring accessibility, and we need to attach accessibility to that core connector. Example, worker is one thing, and payroll interface, and there is one more connector called PICI, PCI. We call as we generally call it as PCI, which is nothing but payroll effective change interface. Is one of the payroll connector that will be sending all the payroll information which requires accessibility to be attached. All these are the core connectors that will be requiring accessibility, and cloud connectors that I was referring, which wouldn't require any kind of accessibility. Automatically, it will be changing the format to this in a way that the system will be accepting, and that format is called EDI format. Okay, EDI format is one of the format that cloud connectors will be generating themselves, and core connectors will be requiring accessibility because core connectors will be generating XML format and will be writing accessibility to transform that XML to different format. Okay. Now, based on what we discussed, right? So, what is the benefit of connectors now? When we compare with EIBs, when you compare EAB and connector, what is the difference we have? Do we require report for connectors? Do we need to create a report for connectors? We don't require any report, right? No need of report. What else are not required? Do we require any kind of data source to choose the data? No data source is required. And when we say data source is not required, similarly, we don't need business object also. And do we require any kind of a transformation to be written to connectors? When I say connectors, you need to think of both cloud as well as core. Okay, cloud connector as well as core connector. So do we require any kind of transformation to be added to connectors? We require for core connectors, but we don't need for cloud connector. Transformation is needed for core connectors, but not for cloud connectors. What is the difference between cloud and core? Difference between cloud connectors and core connectors? Core connectors require transformation, and cloud connectors does not need any transformation. Cloud connectors does not need any kind of transformation. Okay. And what else we have? Specification to connectors. And since connector is independent thing which is not relying on any of the data source, it can process huge volume of data as well. Okay. Because for EAB, we are taking report. Okay. And report has volume restrictions, and EAB can process only 400 MB of information. When your report is having, let's say, 10,000 records, okay, your EAB can process easily. Okay, it has 1 lakh records. Okay, it can process to a certain extent, but when it has 4 lakhs or 5 lakhs of records, irrespective of anything, it can be employee or employee dependent information or any plan information or compensation, anything. It can consist of around 5 lakh or 6 lakhs rows of data, which is more than 400 MB of data. Okay. In that scenario, your EAB will not be processing that information because the volume is huge to the extent that EAB handles. So EAB cannot process that information. But the same information, when you configure through connector, okay, connector can easily process that information. Even connector also has volume issues and running issues it has, but it's not comparatively to EAB. Okay, EAB can process 400 MB only, and connector can process more than 400 MB, but it can max run only for 30 hours. Connector can run maximum 30 hours, and then within this 30 hours, if it is able to process the data, that is fine. But if it is not able to process the data within this 30 hours, your connector will fail and say that unable to process, suspending the file. So if connector has 10 lakh or 15 lakhs rows of data, okay, it will still try to process, but it will take time more than 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, like that. It takes more than time what is expected, and the maximum time it can actually process is 30 hours. Even after 30 hours, it says that it is trying to process, which means that it is not going to process. At the end of the day, when it reaches to the threshold limit of 30 hours, connector will be failing. Okay, saying that unable to process the data, time expectation or timeout issue kind of error you will be getting, and your connector will be failing. Okay. So when you have such kind of things, you need to think of different integration. But when you compare to EIB with connectors, you have good volume processing and additional benefits like connecting to multiple systems. Connector can connect to multiple systems and send data to multiple delivery points. Okay, and connector can also, you can also take data from multiple sources. Okay, and connector can send data to, let's say if you are building connector on worker is a information, right, where it has all the worker information, and worker itself has different details within this connector. Okay, worker core connector has different details. Generally, if in EAB, when you wanted to send lots of information other than worker, you will be adding a related business object, right? So if you wanted to send compensation, if you wanted to send anything related to benefits, if you wanted to send any other data other than worker related, you will be taking related business object in the report, adding that field, and will be sending that information. So within connector, you don't have say, exactly as similar as EIB reports, but within connector, you have a lot of options to choose when you're actually sending the data. Okay, so if you wanted to send worker information, you have one option called, that option name is integration service. Okay, so you have worker integration service. If you wanted to send worker position details, you need to take position integration service. If you wanted to take compensation information of a worker, you need to take compensation integration service. And if you wanted to take any kind of termination details or status details, there are specific integration services. So connector has multiple integration service within it, which can actually where data can be actually selected from these multiple integration services, and finally the output you are getting from the connector, right, will be in a single output, though you are actually adding multiple integration services, but that is within the connector. Okay, within the connector, if you're adding position details, if you're adding compensation, if you're adding worker related, if you're adding benefits, if you're adding any other worker related information from other integration services, though you're taking data from multiple integration services, but ideally you're actually getting that in a single core connector for worker with all this information and sending that in an output file format. Okay, so this is a little confusing for you. If you see, you would have got a clear understanding. It has multiple integration services, which internally it can actually collect the data from multiple integration services and consolidate it as if one output when it is sending data to external system. Okay, so that is all connectors. And the one more advantage of connectors is, connectors will be looking for, by default the feature of the connector is it will be looking for changes. Okay, if you wanted to have changes through EIB, what you need to do, you need to build report with that particular data source, like we have built it. If you wanted to, let's say, if employee changes that you wanted to have when the promotion has occurred, okay, and when employee has got promoted, or when employee has got terminated, when employee has got hired, when employee title has got changed, and when compensation has got changed, All these are change information, right? So where you need to build different report to collect these kind of changes and attach to EIB other than a regular format. But connector, the default feature of connector is it actually looks for the changes automatically. Okay, first run of the connector will be sending complete data to external system. Let's say if you're creating a connector today and tomorrow is a go live date. Okay, so you'll be developing a connector today, and you will be building the connector, and you will be sending a complete data of Workday tomorrow when you're sending data to external system. And day after tomorrow, when you're again sending data through connector, no need of sending full file, right? Whatever changes that would have occurred from tomorrow to day after tomorrow, those changes only needs to be sent to external system. But you don't need to send again a full file until unless there is specific requirement to send full file for all the loads. But generally, first run will be sending complete data, and from second run we'll be sending only change information. So between last run to today's run, whatever changes that would have occurred, connectors will be taking that information and will be sending. So the default feature of the connector is looking for change information. It will drill down into employee profile and will look for all the changes that would have happened for an employee record, like promotion, title change, compensation change, manager change. All these are the changes. So your connector will be looking into these changes, and it will be appropriately selecting all the change records. So whatever would have changed in employee profile, your connector will be collecting all these changes. But in case if you wanted to do the same in EIB, there will be a lot of work that you need to do to make your report to look for only changes. You need to build your report based on date prompts, and you need to provide a date prompts from when to when you wanted to record the changes and all. You need to do some additional work in a EIB based reports. But connectors, the default feature of connector is look for those changes. You'll be having one checkbox when you're running connector. You'll be having one checkbox, and the checkbox does this. You have a checkbox called full file. Okay, when you select that full file checkbox, it will be processing all the records. Okay, it will be processing a full file completely. But when you are unchecking this full file, it means that you don't want to send the full file. When you don't want to send the full file, what does it mean? You wanted to send only changes. Okay, when you check the checkbox, it means that you wanted to send the full file data through full file, and the connector will be collecting all the data completely. But when you wanted to send only changes, so then no need of selecting the checkbox called full file. Automatically connector will assume that you don't want to send a full file, you wanted to send change information. So it will be looking for all the changes would have occurred for that particular record from last run, and it will be sending only change information. Okay, so the feature that we can say for connector is connector can extensively work to record the changes that are happening in employee record. Not only employee, example, I was referring employee records, but if you take cloud connectors, benefit connectors are there, right? Blue Cross, Aetna and all. So those connectors will be looking for changes related to employee. So let's say if employee has enrolled to one of the Blue Cross Blue Shield healthcare profile, and after 6 months employee has got some dependents. Okay, child, employee has got a new baby born. So employee wanted to enroll that new child to the benefit plan. So that is a change, right? Employee is making the change to the benefit plan. He's adding one more dependent to the plan. So your connector will automatically identify when employee has added new member to the benefit plan. Automatically connector will be identifying this in Workday, and it will be sending to vendor that this employee has new member added, new child as added to the benefit plan. Automatically your connector will be identifying this information and will be sending to external system. So the default feature of connector is it will look for changes by default and will be picking all the change information as required. So the default feature of connector is to look for change information. That's the main and important feature of connector. It will be looking for change information. If you wanted to have only changes, you just need to uncheck the full file checkbox. Okay. That is about brief about connectors, and there's few things before I go ahead and create. I wanted to show something on connectors so that you'll have clear understanding. Difference between EIBs and connectors. Since we discussed lots of things, right? You'll be asked the same question. Okay, when you're attending any technical interview related to integrations, you'll be asked what is the difference between EIB and connectors. Why you choose connectors? Why not EIB? You'll be asked questions. You need to answer what we discussed so far. When you will not choose EIB, when you wanted to go with connector, where your EIB is failing to process that volume, the second option you will look for connectors. And then when you look for connectors, so if you have any integration that you need to send to any of the providers through cloud connectors, you wouldn't require any kind of transformation. Okay, that connector itself takes care of transforming the data. So in that scenario, you won't go for EIB. You won't go for EIB, you'll go for cloud connector. Okay. And what else? So now what else that you will be preferring connectors over EIB? And the main feature of the connector is any connector. The main feature that it has is looks for change all the changes automatically. The default feature is it will look for changes because connector will be running on date parameters. Okay, let me add that also. Connectors will be running on date parameters. When I say date parameters, nothing but when you are launching connectors, your connector will be asking you dates. Okay. So what it will be asking? What is the effective date of your data? Effective date of your data. And from when you wanted to send your data. From effective date. Last update. Last update effective date. Not exactly, these launch parameters, but mostly these kind of launch parameters you'll have in connectors, which will ask you till what date that you wanted to run the data. Okay. If you're giving effective date of today and effective date of today, and from effective date of let's say today is 16th of December, right? If you are giving effective date of 16th December, and if you are giving from effective date sometime August 1st, okay. So from 1st of August to December 16th, it will be looking all the changes that would have happened in the system. But if you don't want to select with any specific date ranges, you wanted to send a full file, you'll have an option, full file checkbox. Full file checkbox. If you are checking this checkbox, irrespective of date range, it will be looking for the information of data right from the day when you have started. Very first, let's say you have gone live sometime in the year of 1st of January 2021. Okay. Now, if you are not giving any kind of specific date range, but you wanted to have a full file, when you're selecting full file, it will look for from 2021 of January to till date, whatever data that exists, it will pull all this information. But if you don't want it to go for full file, you'll be selecting no and give specific date ranges from when you wanted to have, let's say from December 1st to December 16th, you wanted to know what are all the changes would have happened in the system. So based on that, you'll be selecting date ranges. Effective date would be today, and from effective date would be 1st of December. Last update would be 1st December, and last update effective date would be 16th of December. These date ranges you will be giving, and your connector will be looking for all the changes between these date ranges and will be getting you the data. So launch parameters are important, and you'll be asked even launch parameters also. So some of the interviewers will ask, can you provide me launch parameters of connectors? So not exactly will be there, but these are the launch parameters. Effective date would be effective date, from effective date, last update, and last update from effective date would be the launch parameters of mostly all the connectors. Because I said, right, connectors will be mostly processing the change information. It would require this information when they are running. From which effective date to when it has to process the data and all, your connectors will be running based on the launch parameters. So you need to know what those launch parameters works on also, you need to know. So we'll be doing all those things when we are doing activity session on connectors. But for now, just understand the conceptually how it works. Even in EAB also, if you wanted to know the changes, we need to create a report with prompts and give those prompts, date prompts, and select those date ranges to run the data for changes from which date to which date. If you wanted to know the changes, you need to pass same date parameters to EAB also and process that. But for connectors, you don't need to create those prompts. Automatically, connector has those launch parameters. So you don't need to create that. You just need to select the dates that you wanted to have under date prompts. So the task to create connectors is create integration system. Create integration system is the task to create connector. And as I was talking about, right, there are some dedicated connectors for dedicated providers. Okay. If we go to by template by category, you see cloud connector for benefits, okay, which will be having all the connectors related to benefits. You can see these are all the benefit providers, mostly in US. I don't think we have anything from India. Mostly from US, these vendors are, okay. Aethna, Blue Cross Blue Shield, Cobra, Anthems, all these are benefit providers, okay. This is the Blue Cross Blue Shield. For each of the state, it has own connector, okay. Let's say if employee is from Texas, Oklahoma, and Illinois and other states, you'll be picking this connector. And if employee is from different New York, Michigan, and other states, you'll be selecting this connector. Like that, we have different connectors for different states. Okay. So connectors will be based on specific vendor. Okay. And you can see lots of connectors from each of these categories. Okay. So for financials, we have different connectors. Okay. You can send those, you can pick those connectors if you want to have. And for HCM, you have different connectors, which will be choosing those connectors based on your data requirements. And similarly, we have lots of other connectors also. Okay. So based on our requirement, we'll be choosing that. Okay. Now, as I said, you actually identify whether it is cloud connectors or core connectors. Okay. You see, Cloud Connect for benefits. Okay, which is nothing but you'll have connectors here, which doesn't require any kind of XSLT when you're choosing these connectors. Automatically, those will be generated in a way, file formatting in a way that they wanted to have. But if we go for Cloud Connect for HCM, if you are taking these core connectors, you see here, core connector assign, organize, inbound, core connector background check, core connector background check order, candidate inbound, competencies, global worker. When you take core connectors, you would be requiring transformation. But when you are taking connectors that are not related to core connector, you wouldn't require any kind of transformation. But when you are picking core connectors, any core connector, if you pick any of the core connectors from this list, you would be requiring to attach transformation to perform this. And in core connectors, mostly we'll be using this one, core connectors positions, core connectors worker, core connectors organizations, core connectors. If you go to HCM, you'll be having lots of core connectors. And in these core connectors, the mainly used one is worker, which will be looking for worker information. No need of any kind of worker business object. I told you, right? No need of report related or worker business object and all. Core connectors workers will be looking for all the worker related information, worker person information, compensation, position, all the activities related to worker. You can actually get from worker connector info. And you also have core connector positions. No need to create any kind of related reports on positions, because you have core connector readily available on positions. You can just create this connector on positions, and similarly locations you have, organizations you have, where you can report or where you can actually get the data that is there in Workday for all the organizations, for all the positions, for all the workers. Okay, so mostly you'll be choosing worker connectors in core connectors. And if you wanted more, mainly other than worker, you can say benefits is one of the huge area where we'll be using connectors, which are nothing but cloud connectors. Okay, because there are lots of providers available on cloud connectors for vendors. So that's the reason why when you get any kind of integration requirement, you'll first check whether that external system has any kind of connector readily available. Let's say if someone reaches out to you, hey, we wanted to integrate new integration for vendor RxSS. If you get this kind of requirement, what you'll do, you'll first check whether connector is readily available for RxS or not. Okay, then you'll choose whether you have to go for connector or report. So you'll be just looking for RxS. You have benefit connector for Rx readily available. So no need of actually going for custom integration with report EIB. You have the connector readily available for your Workday. You can just choose this one, select the data, and trigger the data. So whenever you get integration requirement first, based on the complexity, you'll be first choosing which connect, whether that particular external system has connector or not. If there is no connector, then you will go for EIB and transformation.